The Kerrville City Council is now in session, and I'm going to ask Gary Cochran, council member, to lead us in prayer and the pledge.
Please stand. Join me in prayer. Father God, tonight we pray asking you for understanding, for wisdom, and for knowledge. And we pray for all those that are hurting, whether it be physically, financially, or emotional. And Father, we ask that you be with them. Father, we ask that you hold all of us close in your loving arms and give us the strength to continue on through this crisis. And finally, I want to celebrate in advance all the blessings that you will continue to bring to us. Please give us the vision to recognize them and the compassion to share them with others. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are continuing to operate under a different way of doing the council meetings because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the emergency situation we're all dealing with. We're thankful that we have a way for the public to remain engaged and participate in open public council meetings in various ways. Citizen or public participation has been available by calling in, emailing, or using the City Hall drop box before 5:45. All of these instructions are provided online and in the agenda. Tonight, we're also holding a public hearings, again for the first time in a long while, so anyone wanting to speak on items 2A through 2E will be able to call in later than 5:45 as long as it is before the individual agenda item is introduced or read into the record. Any questions that citizens and visitors might have may be responded to until after the public comments have concluded and if a member of the council raises the question. Finally, we have attempted to omit any non-essential items from the agenda, like announcements, public forum, and items for future agendas. Instead, citizens and the public are always welcome to contact the city via our website, city app, email, and phone to make comment or ask questions on any subject. We ask for your patience regarding any difficulties that might arise as we move with this new format on a temporary basis. Now we come to the consent agenda, and these items will be voted on together unless a member of the council or a citizen asks that we pull something and deal with it separately.
Mr. Mayor, I understand, I believe A has been pulled, and am I correct?
Yes,
Yes,
right.
ma'am. A has been pulled.
Right.
And that's fine. I would just like to make a comment, and I'd just like to thank the staff for their efforts in bringing the price down. They did that considerably, and I thank them for taking on part of that project in-house to help make that work. So they are working with us, trying to keep our costs down and help make up for some of the deficit that we're going to be looking at.
Okay. All right.
I'll make a motion that we approve items 1B and 1C on the consent agenda.
1B, 1C. Okay, second?
A second.
Okay. All in favor, let it be known by the raised hand. Okay. And we have a citizen to speak to 1A, I believe.
Yes, sir. Ms. McIntyre, please unmute the caller.
Hello. So it's my turn, right?
Yes, caller, please
Okay.
state your name and address, and you now have 4 minutes to speak.
Okay, George Baruti, 1616 Glen Road. I just wanted to clear up some misleading information that has been presented to you in the agenda bill for this item. The lead paragraph from the staff summary on this agenda item states, After 4 years of implementation, approximately $6.3 million have been utilized, resulting in approximately 128 lane miles having completed maintenance and bringing the community's overall pavement condition index up to 69.1 from the original analysis of 59.7. Reading this sentence would lead one to believe that the level of investment in street maintenance over the previous 4 years has raised the overall condition of our streets roughly 10 points, which would be excellent if it were accurate. In fact, what occurred was after consulting with city staff in 2019, the pavement evaluation contractor modified their standard index calculation methodology to retroactively regrade the 2015 overall street condition index to be 67 instead of 59.7 as originally graded. This revisionist history was outlined on page 10 of the 2019 pavement maintenance report as follows. The overall PCI score is 69 for the entire city of Kerrville road network in 2019, which is about 2 points higher than the PCI score in 2015. Per discussion with the city of Kerrville, it was decided to exclude the low and moderate severity rutting from the PCI calculation and to apply the deduct value of low severity rutting to sections with high severity rutting. This adjustment was made for both 2015 and 2019, and the resulting network PCI was 67 and 69 for 2015 and 2019, respectively. In other words, the $6.3 million investment effectively raised the overall condition 2 points, not the 10 points that staff would have you believe in the current agenda summary. Why does any of this matter, you might ask? Well, in this time of budget cuts and heightened scrutiny of finances, how could you possibly be expected to make wise decisions without being provided complete and accurate information? Thank you for your service and for allowing me to do my small part in providing you a more complete picture of this information. Thanks.
All right. Do we have further discussion of that item?
So we're approving a construction contract with Wagner Materials and Construction for the 2020 base repair project in the amount of $128,000. And there's a change order in there that lowers and gives the city savings in the amount of $240,000. Am I correct in that?
Yes,
So that's what we're looking at tonight.
yes, and Mr. Hoppy, could you
all
address some of the misinformation, please?
Sure, absolutely. I think we've been very clear, several iterations, as you know, when we came to council both last summer, this fall, a couple of times, we launched off on more than $8 million worth of reconstruction street efforts in addition to the aggressive paving schedule that this council has been very adamant about. And so I think we've been very clear in the differences between the 2015 paving study and the 2019 paving study. And I think we've also been very clear that not only have we held the line on the PCI, but we've made improvements on the PCI, and this council has been aggressive in ramping up funding as we've been applicable to do. So that's the only comment I'll make on that. In regards to tonight's item, yes, Councilmember Clarkson, you're correct. There was originally in the budget an item for base repair, which also had a crack seal component to it. We just call it the base repair project. Essentially, it was $368,000. What we've been able to do is to bring some of that work in-house, and we still have some material costs on that, but we were able to bring the outside contract amount to just be the crack seal component, which we will then go over and slurry seal over that. It's kind of a two-piece maintenance procedure. So these guys will still do the crack seal component, and that's basically why there's that change order to deduct out the internal work that we'll now be able to do. So we were able to realize some cost savings there and do some of that work internally. It brings that contract down from 368 to 128. I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Could you explain the PCI?
Pavement condition index. So again, that's when Fugro went through. They drive the roadways with a pretty complex piece of machinery where they're hitting the roadway with cameras and radar and all kinds of other sensors. They have ride sensors, and so this year we were able to enhance the indexes, so to speak, to also pick up the road condition index, where it's not only monitoring the alligator cracking and the edge cracking and things of that nature, but also just the feel of the roadway and how, when you drive across it, how smooth does it feel? And so arguably the complexity of the index has gotten more complex from 2015 to 2019. We're able to get a better overall real condition for the roadway surface and what the driver is experiencing when they're driving over it.
Okay, all right, good. All right, do I hear a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion that we authorize the city manager to finalize and execute a construction contract in the amount of $128,000 with Wagner Materials and Construction.
All
I'll
right.
second it.
Okay, we got a second? All in favor, let it be known by the raised hand. And it carries unanimously. All right, that's the end of the consent agenda, and we move to the public hearing. Ms. McLennan, would you read in the 2A?
Ordinance number 2020-8, an ordinance amending Chapter 60 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Kerrville, Texas, which adopted zoning regulations, use districts, and a zoning map in accordance with the city's comprehensive plan. Such chapter, more commonly known as the City Zoning Code, by changing the zoning and classification of a property generally located west of and adjacent to Loop 534 North, Veterans Highway, and north of its intersection with Cypress Creek Road, FM 1341, comprising approximately 3.88 acres from a single-family residential zoning district R1 to a multifamily residential zoning district R3, amending the comprehensive plan Kerrville 2050 to make it consistent with such amendment, providing a cumulative clause, providing for severability, providing an effective date, ordering publication, and providing other matters relating to the subject. Any citizen wishing to speak on public hearing item 2A, please raise your hand now via the Zoom app or *9 if calling in by telephone. After Mayor Blackburn opens the public hearing, the moderator, Ms. McInturf, will notify you when it's your turn to speak and then unmute you. Mayor Blackburn, back to you.
Okay, all right. Mr. Paxton.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, this is an appeal of the Planning and Zoning Commission's denial on March 5th. This case was presented to go from R1 to R3 on the 3.88 acres along Loop 534. At the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the public and the commission both addressed several different concerns: drainage on the property, height restrictions, setbacks, and the land use itself going to apartments. Planning and Zoning Commission concluded through the discussion and acknowledgement that it certainly is a difficult site given the location and the topography, that R1 may not be the best fit for it, but had concerns with the height allowances in R3 and the density that the apartments would provide. The Planning Commission, and this presentation that was presented to the commission, the property is zoned residential R1 currently. It's on the future land use plan as neighborhood residential. The request to R3 would include a change to the future land use plan to transitional residential, which a major place type or land use of that would be the multifamily. There's the site there, zoned R1. To the northeast is the golf course, zone PI. To the east is Loop 534. To the south is neighborhood zoned R1 and R2. Here's a list of the land use table showing the different uses ranging from R1, R1A, R2, and R3. R3 does allow for several of the uses in R1. Multifamily would be the big one that is allowed in R3 that is not permitted in R1. Previous zoning from the old zoning code was RC on this property, which would be similar to R2 in today's zoning code. Here's the elevations and property cross-section provided by the applicant, showing the option of doing a 4-story building or possibly up to a 7-story building, depending upon setbacks and location of the buildings. And then there's, again, the site showing the topography and the location off the loop. With that, I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
All right. We have questions.
I have a question. When an applicant is coming this far with an appeal, comes before us, what information are they required to bring? Concept plans, architectural designs, those types of things. Is that required when they're simply requesting a zoning change?
No, but at the level of zoning, what we're looking at is just the land use itself, the zoning, and how that fits in the future land use plan and the policies of the comprehensive plan.
So a general idea is still suggested, at
Right.
least, so that we have an idea, which I think we did get.
Yeah, so the applicant did submit both to P&Z and of course to council here, some semblance of what they were looking to build, ranging from 4 to 6 or 7 story apartment buildings, multiple buildings on the site. They have not gone through a formal design showing location of buildings, parking, where the parking will be located, but just a general concept.
Which sometimes leaves more questions than answers. I understand they're trying to give us an idea, but it opens up the door to, well, what is the parking? Is it 7 stories? What kind of architecture would look like
Right.
with a 7-story? And that's a height that I'm not real excited about, frankly. But, the preliminary part of this can have more questions than answers with it, is all I'm thinking. That's my thoughts.
Drew, do they now own this property?
Yes,
They do, okay. There's a for sale sign up off of 534 at the entrance, so I wasn't
okay.
sure.
That one?
Pardon?
Is it that one that has a
Uh-huh,
sale sign?
yeah.
Because there's a gate
Uh-huh.
that has a for sale sign
Yeah.
on it.
gotcha.
I thought it was Northland.
I have I listened to the P and Z meeting, and I have, because we don't have an open forum, decided to write up my notes at this time. And so I would ask, do you want to wait until after public comment for that? To conclude?
Either way.
I would probably prefer to wait until after.
Okay, all right, okay.
Drew, may I ask another question? If we said no tonight to this, then they would have to come back. Give me the time frame again,
To come back with the same request that's before you tonight would be a 12-month timeframe.
okay?
Is it
To
12
come
months
back.
from
for the
today or
same.
from when they made their original request?
Be 12 months from today. If they were to change that, go to a different zoning district, modify the design and go through either mixed use or some other options, go down to R2 and look at some of the options that are in R2. That being a different request, the Planning and Zoning Commission could then weigh in to say that that request is different enough and allow it to come back through the process before that 12-month prohibition.
I looked at this very carefully, as others have, and I'm concerned about the neighbors in the sense of what was kind of initially drawn, as much as 7 stories and so forth. If Mr. Rayburn came back with, say, and requested a PD, but he was very clear, and had a site plan, and was very clear about what he was going to do in regard to drainage, so that we're looking at every kind of protection for the neighbors, while still him being able to develop this property. And he says at some point, this will be home.
Right.
He'll move here. I did note in his letter, March 13, he said, we would like to appeal on the ground that we believe the board rejected the rezoning due to their fear of a development that has yet to be even explicitly proposed. But if he decides to come back with a PD, that's got to include a site plan, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Paxton, let me ask a couple of questions based on that same line of questioning then. Is that necessary to request a zoning change?
Only for mixed use and planned development district is the
To
concept
go
plan
from an
required.
R1 to an R3,
That is not required.
he's not required to do a site plan, elevations. That should be, if my understanding is, it should be used based on the highest and best use of that property.
That's correct. And then and compared to the policies in the comprehensive plan.
Correct.
Right,
And
right.
I guess, okay. I just want to clarify, none of what you're suggesting is required under a zoning ordinance, a zoning change.
Uh-huh.
So if you did a PD or, and would it be nice to have all of that? Absolutely, and I think that's great. I just want it clear that it's not a requirement for what he's asking us to do.
What he's now asking us to do.
That's correct.
Right. Okay. Yeah, what you're saying, he didn't avoid a requirement. Yeah, okay.
If anything, he provided too much
I
information.
think that's
probably.
what happened, yeah. His preliminary plan showed a 7-story building, which was a red flag right away, which perhaps.
Mr. I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Maybe my microphone's not working. Can you hear me okay?
I just checked it. It looks like it's on. There's no switch.
Maybe I need to direct my voice. I think the plans he submitted actually opened it up for more questions and concerns, and it's so preliminary. It wasn't written in stone what he planned to do, which is exactly why he's not required to present all of that while he's asking for a zoning change, because all of that requires money to do, which if you had the luxury of the extra money and time, great. But I think it still could get changed. In other words, what we would look at as far as plans while we're looking at a zoning change could be so preliminary, it might change as they get into permitting or even engineering. So I think he thought he did us a favor by providing this information, but I think it opened up some doors of concern
And
with
again,
what he
just a
presented.
question out of my ignorance as much as anything, but walk me through this. So if I wanted to come in and make this application, and I requested an R3,
Right.
and I didn't have anything, I think that's the best use for the property, that's gonna allow me to get the best value out of my property, and we went along with that, just hypothetically. He comes back in a year or 2 years and proposes a site plan. It still has to go through the city vetting process. The staff still has to approve those. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So
The
if
site
it-
plan and building permit would go through those processes.
Right. Now, I understand at that point, there's no public commissions, no hearings, no city council. It just is strictly up to staff at that point. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But we still have that
Still meet-
aspect of
Yeah,
it.
still meet the zoning code, building code, drainage requirements.
Right.
Yes.
The reason I wanted to save my comments until afterwards was because I want to be able to maybe add comments if there's something I haven't heard. Would it be okay if I went ahead and ran through mine now?
Sure. I mean, make additional comments later.
Okay, so I kind of wrote mine up just so I wouldn't get off track and try and get through it as quickly as I can, so bear with me. After reviewing the March P and Z meeting and reading further notes from the developer, I compiled my thoughts. So regarding the neighbors, what I heard at the P and Z meeting, adequate drainage. I hear this and we hear this over and over again, and it's a very understandable concern. I would certainly be concerned if there was a new development going in next to my home, but what I am very confident in is the city and what the city is doing to protect existing neighborhoods. Just because a zoning change may occur does not mean that it's over. There are so many permits and through the permitting process, as you stated at P and Z, Drew, so eloquently, the developer builder has to show in their development how they're gonna mitigate drainage. They're required to not increase velocity or flow, and I'm sure in most cases probably mitigate that even further through their efforts. So I understood that concern. I feel like that's been addressed just through the way the city handles drainage issues. Proximity and height. I heard from the neighbors, and here I think the zoning code really addresses that issue again well for residential neighborhoods. For the R3 zoned property that adjoins this less dense residential on either side, which could be R2 and R1, which could include single families, townhomes, duplexes. There are height and buffering requirements, and as a member of the Code Review Committee, that was very important to us, which limits the ability of the development to encroach upon other less dense residential areas. And I think it does a really good job of protecting neighborhoods. So to the neighbors, I would say there are protections in that regard as well. Diminished property values, I heard. In this case, the developer doesn't have the ability, from what I can see, to place those units in such close proximity to these residential zones. Using residential streets. First, the street is owned by the city, not the neighborhood. However, this property also has direct access onto Loop 534, not through a neighborhood, and the developer has indicated that this will be the point of entry and exit for the development. The developer rightfully asserts, according to our code, that R3 development should be located in an area where there is direct access to a collector and or arterial roadway. Other concerns I heard, sightlines. So this is where I pause a little bit on the sightlines. It depends on where you're looking at the property. Based on the height requirements, the developer does not believe that the property will reach over the hillside. Looking at the width across the property, the setbacks and the maximum height and the amount of height the developer is trying to achieve, I don't see how they could exceed that height either for that sightline. But here's my last concern, and this is where I get stuck. It's the proximity to the golf course. The land that adjoins the golf course doesn't have any protections the way residential property has. I could not find specific requirements when you take an R3 and you join it onto a public and institutional property that's zoned for public use. So to me, it seems that we're protecting our neighborhoods, but we also have a duty to protect our parks and our green spaces. And to that end, this is where I first started to have a problem. The guiding principle F7 from our comp plan says that we need to be thoughtful when considering land uses and provide facilities and services that enhance local parks, green space, and the river trail. So then my question became, well, will this R3 development do that? And the answer I landed on was, I don't know. And that's where I got stuck. If we approve this zoning change appeal, we are effectively allowing the developer to do whatever he sees fit as long as it fits within those guidelines. Normally, I think that's completely appropriate. The only reason I take pause here is because of its location, which directly adjoins an amenity, a public area, and a green space. I'm not worried about the height, and I'm not worried about the sight lines, and I think the neighborhoods are protected, but I don't know that I feel that I have adequate assurance that by making this zone change that we're protecting and preserving our natural environment in the way that we should. So, if you, can I conclude? I know what's been going on. What do you want me to do at this point?
Wrap it up.
Okay. So I had a conversation with Drew, which I'll share afterwards in my comments. It has to do with my, with how I feel about the motion in front of us tonight.
Okay, all right. Okay, any other discussion from council before we go to any citizen input?
Well, one thing, I did just measure using the scale on the map. The golf course exposure is about 2,000 feet, just so you know.
2,000 feet? Okay.
Using the scale that's on that map.
Okay. Okay, it is 6:29, and we go now to a public hearing. If there are individuals who would like to speak to this.
Ms. McInturf, are there any speakers?
We do not have any raised hands or speakers on this item. Oh, I'm sorry. We actually just got a raised hand. Bruce Strachey is raising his hand.
Right.
Bruce, if you could state your name, your address, and you have 4 minutes to speak to the item.
Bruce Strachey, 615 Earl Garrett. So if we look at the mixed use zone here in Kerrville that allows multifamily, and it runs all along the Guadalupe River and the river trail. and we look at other examples that I could go through, but I don't want to take 4 minutes. There are plenty of examples where we impact parks and public institutions here where we can do this property as permitted by right. This site has significant topography, and this applicant could have come looking for a variance because of that. But instead, they decided to go through our normal process, use our typical zoning, and ask for the best use of a property that I have over the years never figured out how to use. That is along a significant arterial. And we have additional processes with the development site plan, the platting process, the building permit process, where we can limit the access and the ability to use that neighborhood below, but turn this property into a productive piece for this particular property owner. And I understand the height thing with the LCRA and their requirements for the towers and such. I don't believe this property will ever be 7 stories. They're offering to do underground parking, and the problem we have here is if we grant this straight zoning as R3, we have no way to enforce restrictions on that. Unfortunately, this property is now too small, as I understand the current zoning code, for a PDD, because it's only 3.9 acres. And so how do we mitigate that in a way that turns this into a productive piece for this property owner? And we're all very well, certainly I am, I will only speak for myself, very stringent property owner rights people. But this is a beautiful property that takes advantage of the view down Quinlan Creek and across the golf course, and provides a residential opportunity that we desperately need in this city, according to the housing plan or the housing report that we did in the last 12 or 18 months. It's hard for me to understand how an arterial property couldn't fit into the R3 or not have a way to do a PDD if we're concerned about some limits that we need to and should be. And I think the owner has offered to, but we don't know. He could sell it 6 months from now. And so how do we tie that up? How do we save that residential property below that would be very difficult to access, keep this access on the loop, and turn it into a productive piece from a tax standpoint and a housing standpoint in Kerrville that could provide 40 affordable units that we really want to see. And I apologize, but that's my comment. So, and trust me, this is a very difficult process using Zoom and the video. And so I think I would be a little more eloquent if I was standing at the podium. I appreciate all of you for working through it, and thank you for understanding my difficulty.
Is there anyone else to speak for or against this? Okay. I'm going to go back to you.
So just to pick up in my conclusion, which is why I wanted to wait till after comment. You would have thought that Bruce and I had a conversation, but we did not. My comments are, although I am very interested in this project, I think it has potential, and it certainly fills a need identified in our strategic housing plan. And although the ideas presented by the developer appear to be appealing in design and their approach with the under unit parking and a promise of a gated community and other attractive features, if I approve an R3, I no longer have anything other than a handshake agreement as to what the development may end up looking like. I'm also very staunchly in favor of private property owners' rights, and to go back and repeat, if this location was different and didn't affect the beauty of the hill country, I would not feel that I had the right or the duty to oversee that. And this situation becomes different because of in this case, the golf course. So my conversation with Drew, the PD zoning requires a 5-acre tract, and Drew and I talked about that. So Drew, as fantastic as he is, was able to help me find in the code, under 60-52C4, did I get that all right, Drew?
That's correct.
Okay. Minimum development size, the minimum tract for any request for PD zoning shall not be less than 5 acres. No request for PD zoning on a tract that does not meet the 5-acre minimum requirement may be considered unless the applicant has requested a waiver of this requirement by filing an appeal with City Council. The appeal shall be reviewed and may be approved by council in advance of the filling of the application for PD with the department. The PD zoning request does not require a concept plan, and approval would be, the PD zoning request does require a concept plan and approval, and would need to be tied to that plan as well as any other conditions on this case. So our community wants this strategic plan for growth. A quote from a citizen in the plan says, "Let's shape the plan to protect Cribble's assets while also providing developers options." I think that if the developer wants to pursue an R2 zone, or if the developer wants to continue to look at higher height and density, I would feel comfortable personally allowing the developer to go forward with the PD or with the R2, but I'm not going to be able to approve an R3 in this case, and that's how I'll vote tonight.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But a PD would require a site plan.
That's correct.
Yes.
Does require a concept plan. The zoning code specifically outlines what is required of that concept plan. Preliminary footprints, drainage, whether they're looking at standard setbacks or different setbacks in the standard zoning code. So they've got to spell all of that out.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just a couple comments. I think some condos or not too high units would really be attractive there. I don't have a problem with it being looking down on the golf course. I don't think that would. I don't think that would be a problem. I don't think the golfers are going to complain about that. I felt after watching the presentation and reading the letter of appeal, I just felt like they just weren't quite ready for coming to the council. I just felt like they weren't ready. They just really didn't know what they wanted to do. And I realize that there's some more work that they need to do in that regard. But I would feel very comfortable with a PDD, and if in fact we can grant a variance on the acreage, and if we can do that.
But that's not the issue that's before council tonight. That's not something we can
Well,
vote on.
that's true. But just for future, that if we were to do something like that, so that we had a better understanding, I would be much more comfortable. But I would not be comfortable moving ahead with the R3 right now. I just don't think I don't think they're ready for that. I don't think we're ready for that.
Couple of things, on the PD, the three things. The goal is to create a better, more unique development, not to avoid standard code requirements. In exchange for flexible requirements proposed by the applicant, more information is required with the applicant, including a concept plan. And once the PD regulations are adopted, minor amendments to the concept plan can be approved at the staff level under certain criteria. So I think there's some protection in that. My feeling is if we recommend, we turn down the R3 but recommend the PD, then we will hear along the way what's proposed, what the ideas are, etc. The other thing I will say, I do not want to approve something that has had unanimous dissent by planning and zoning. I respect them, know they work hard, look at these things very carefully. So that would cause me great concern to go with the R3.
And Mayor, as a clarification, it's my understanding that what happens tonight is we approve or deny the appeal, but then the impetus is on the developer to decide if they want to approach council about getting a waiver for a PD. So we're not making that decision for them. They can look at that and say, do I want to do this or not do this? And they'll come back if they want to.
Just a couple more comments. I think we need to keep what our charge is. It's not what our opinion is. It's what is allowed. We have to. It's business. We have to follow what the rule is.
Sure.
And to me, it comes back down to he went through the process, and I respect P&Z also. I was not at that meeting. I don't know exactly how it went. I mean, I've seen some of the tape of it, but the developer at this point, and let me just take it hypothetically, we go, well, we're going to deny this, but maybe come back with a site plan and a development plan. You're asking him to spend significant amounts of money with no guarantee that the PDD is going to go through either.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm confused. Is we agree this is a great spot. We agree that condos will work here, which is R3. I'm really concerned that we're bringing in outside influences, not what we're called upon to do. We're here to determine whether this qualifies as an R3 and if that's the best use of the land.
Well, I take exception to that because this, for me, was completely what I felt. And what I said I'm coming from is property that adjoins an amenity that's been important to Kerrville for a long time. Based on what I've seen, I trust the developer, but you know as well as anybody else that these nice buildings and underground parking, you're talking 1.5 parking spaces for a one bedroom unit, and then 2 for additional, and there's just adjoining a golf course with no restriction at all as to anything other than a 25-foot setback for them. They just isn't enough for me. If this property didn't face a public amenity that is used for recreational purposes, I wouldn't stop and have any pause. That is the only consideration that I'm giving to my feelings about changing to R3 right now. And I went through a lot of scenarios with Drew over the phone as far as density. How can, if they did want to come back and say R2, how dense can it be? And 2 units, and how high can they build? 4 stories, but only 2 units, and all of these different things. And I understand that R2 doesn't give them a way to offer the density that they want. And I also understand that density may be appropriate. So I've kind of going back and forth too. So my final feeling on that is simply that it adjoins a public.
And I just have one comment.
And I kind of understand your concern, but I play golf. I played on golf courses all over the United States and world, and there's condos on every golf course in America.
And there's some
I thought about
apartments on
that
there
too,
right
and
now.
I thought about
so-
skiing, and I thought about all of those things.
Yeah. So I mean, I hear what you're saying. I'm
I
not
just
sure
have one more
it doesn't
comment,
affect
sir.
me to the same extent.
Okay.
Just don't lose sight of the fact, in his defense, it says here in his letter, I've been trying to build on this land for the best part of 4 years. Over this time, Kerrville has had 4 land use directors, and every time a change took place, I was lost in the shuffle and back to ground zero. Now, I can't, dispute or defend those facts, but I'm just saying he has been around. It didn't just happen yesterday. This has required an ungodly amount of time and considerable money, neither of which I have in abundance to waste. And that's his feelings, but I think we need to remember, I don't think he just started this process within even the last 12 months. So perhaps his grandson is new at the presentation part of it, but I do think he has certainly been planning very carefully what to do with, and because of the zoning changes that he's been through already, he's had to go back and revise his plan. And I think he will work with us. I think his family is going to be involved. I think that's what he mentions in his letter, is this is not just something that will be sold off to someone else. So I'm inclined to vote for the R3, and I think that I agree with what Gary said about the golf course. Actually, there are some apartments right now that you do look at on Shiner. And, you know, there's a lot of buildings. There's behind the hardware store, whatever store that is. I mean, I'm so worried about my shot. I'm never really thinking so much about it's where's the ball. Anyway, that's my thing.
Okay, well, to that, my only comment is that when he bought the property and I asked Drew, it was RC. And I also asked Drew, what is the compatible use to RC? And that's now R2. So if you're purchasing a property at a zoning, it's already stating that this is what's allowable in that area, then, I mean, I think there's some knowledge when you purchase that property about what you can do with the property. And if you want to change the use, then you assume that risk of whether or not that's appropriate and whether or not people feel that that's appropriate.
Yeah, and not to argue that point, but it was RC and now it's R1. So when we did the zoning change, it didn't stay compatible.
Well, I agree,
So,
but he's not
that's
asking for
neither here nor
R2.
there. One other question, if you can help me remember, we just did a zoning change, as I recall, out on Spur 100, I believe,
Yes.
and that went from,
I went to RM, the residential mix.
okay,
Off the top of my head, I believe it was R2.
but to my knowledge, we approved that zoning change without site plans,
That's correct.
anything like that. Is that correct? So it's not unprecedented for us to do that.
That's correct.
All right. The issue before us is, do we grant the appeal in regard to R3 for Mr. Rayburn's property? All in favor?
I think we
What?
Need a motion.
Yeah, okay. Do you have a motion in that regard?
I will move that we grant just a minute here. We grant the appeal for ordinance number 2020-08. Am I saying that right? Does that make sense?
Is that what you mean?
Could you restate it, just so make sure I heard it
That we
correctly?
approve the appeal.
Okay.
Okay, does that make it better? That we approve the appeal for ordinance number 2020-08.
Second.
Meaning you're approving R3.
Yes. Yes.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of approving R3, if you'd let it be known by the raised hand. Okay, we got two. All right. All opposed by the same sign? Okay. All right. And by the way, I forgot to gavel out of the public hearing.
That's
Do you have
okay.
the time on that?
You completed the public hearing at 6:33 PM, but you can close it now.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, it's closed, all right. Okay, let's go to 2B. Ms. McLennan, would you read that in?
Ordinance number 2020-09. An ordinance amending number 2003-26, which created a planned development district for Retail Trade 1 and Building Construction Specialist Development on an approximately 1.93 acre tract of land known as the Martin Addition, Block 1, Lots 1 through 3, out of the Samuel Wallace Survey Number 112, Abstract Number 360, and more commonly known as 3001 Memorial Boulevard, State Highway 27, as located within the city of Kerrville, Kerr County, Texas, by amending the site plan for the property, amending Chapter 60 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Kerrville, Texas, which adopted zoning regulations, use districts, and a zoning map, such chapter more commonly known as the City Zoning Code as appropriate, providing a cumulative clause, providing for severability, providing an effective date, ordering publication, and providing other matters relating to the subject. Any citizen wishing to speak on public hearing item 2B, please raise your hand now via the Zoom app or *9 of calling in by telephone. After Mayor Blackburn opens the public hearing, the moderator, Ms. McInturf, will notify you when it is your turn to speak and then unmute you. Mayor Blackburn, back to you.
Okay. Mr. Paxton?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request to amend the concept plan of a previous plan development from 2003. Here's the new concept plan. The original concept plan did include 2 buildings on the northeastern lots. Neither one of those projects have come to fruition since 2013. The first lot that you see on the north end is actually encumbered by a 100-foot sewer line easement. So that property is no longer buildable. The adjacent property is used for some of their outside materials for the landscape company. And as you can see on the southwest corner, they are looking to add a new workshop area for tools, equipment, and office. The original PD did have some architectural requirements based on those preliminary projects that were proposed in 2003. A lot of the comments addressed the facade facing Memorial and the back facade facing Riverside Drive because those 2 lots go through to both streets. They've moved this building onto the lot that does not front Riverside Drive so that the adjacent residential properties will actually already be screened from that project. On March 5th, the Planning and Zoning approved the case with unanimous vote.
Unanimous vote, okay. We're going to deal with another piece of property in that area tonight. What's happening to that property in there in general?
I'm starting to see quite a bit of movement, different projects coming in. I know through the comprehensive plan, the Kerrville 2050 plan, community voiced a concern for, or a desire to reinvest in the community rather than continue to expand. So we are seeing a lot of those projects reinvest money and rebuild some of those projects. The landscape company, Martin Landscaping, is there today. They've been there for a number of years. They're just wanting to continue to grow the business, and this was their best fit rather than the plans they had back in 2003.
Okay, all right. Council, questions, observations? All right, we will move to the public hearing at 6:52. And
Ms. McInturf, are there any speakers?
We do not have any raised hands or speakers on this item.
okay, all right. Okay, back to the council.
Mayor, would you
Questions,
like to
comments?
close the public?
You need to close the public hearing.
I'm sorry?
I think you need to close the public
Yeah.
hearing.
There you go. At 6:53, thank you. Okay, council?
No, I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2020-09.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by the raised hand, and it's unanimous. Okay, 2C, Mrs. McLennan.
Ordinance number 2020-10, an ordinance repealing ordinance number 2009-08, which created a planned development district on an approximate 3.06 acre tract of land out of the Samuel Wallace Survey number 112, abstract number 360 within the city of Kerrville, Texas, and generally located at the southwest corner of Memorial Boulevard, State Highway 27 and Loop 534, Veterans Highway intersection, establishing the zoning on the same property as a general commercial district, C3, in accordance with Chapter 60 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Kerrville, Texas, which adopted zoning regulations, use districts, and a zoning map pursuant to the city's comprehensive plan, such chapter more commonly known as the City Zoning Code, providing a cumulative clause, providing for severability, providing an effective date, ordering publication, and providing other matters relating to the subject. Any citizen wishing to speak on public hearing item 2C, please raise your hand now via the Zoom app or *9 if calling in by telephone. After Mayor Blackburn opens the public hearing, the moderator, Ms. McInturf, will notify you when it's your turn to speak and then unmute you. Mayor Blackburn, back to you.
Okay, all right. Mr. Paxton.
Thank you. As Ms. McLennan mentioned, this is repealing a PD, Plan Development District from 2009 and replacing it with C3 General Commercial District. Here's the current zoning map. As you can see across Memorial, that dark red color is C3. This is at the intersection of two major arterials, Loop 534 and Memorial Boulevard. The balance of that intersection is C2 on the east side of 534. That is adjacent and nearby the previous case. Behind it is some residential properties that front Riverside Drive. The area in the future land use plan is community commercial, which would be appropriate for C2 or C3. And given the intersection of the two major arterials, the amount of land that we're looking at, C3 would be consistent with those policies.
One basic question. It's described on the side as being on the southwest corner. Looks like it's on the northwest corner. Anyway, that's whatever. Okay, but
Look at it like that.
I drove around the property today and noticed on Riverside there are a number of homes that used to be there on the corner and in further that are not, and then you get into a whole series of homes. Again, can this be done in a way that protects the integrity of that residential area?
The C3 does require screening adjacent to the residential property. And then, of course, depending upon the use, there are supplemental requirements as if there's any impacts to the flood zone. Since they are that strip of land that does go down to the river, it would have to take that into consideration on some of the different uses.
All right, counsel?
Tell me again, it's currently zoned what?
PD.
So it's a PD now.
Excuse me. It's currently zoned Plan Development District. The
And the
list
sur-
of uses in that district, although not as inclusive as C3, many of them are comparable to the C3 uses in today's code. The PD was based on the old zoning code, so it doesn't match up quite apples to apples, but
And that's
so-
what I gathered.
Just
I'm
let me-
sorry, go
yeah.
ahead.
So I just noticed the adjacent properties are C2, is that correct?
that's correct. Going
North.
north on, or I guess west on Memorial
27.
is C2.
Then
Then
across the street.
PD that we just looked at for the landscape company. Going east on Memorial across 534 is C2. Caddy Corner is C2, and then across Memorial is C3.
What's the property directly across the street? What's the red?
I believe that is Trailer Sales
Yeah,
Company.
back 40.
Yeah, I mean, I know what it is, what's it zoned?
Oh, C2, or C3, excuse me.
So it's C3.
Yes. Yeah, the dark red is C3.
So, no, I'm just trying to get my head around the difference between C2 and C3.
Both obviously commercial. C3 does get more into a regional commercial, whereas C2 is more of a community commercial or a neighborhood commercial. And again, with the intersection of two major arterials.
Only question, Drew, or just wanting to make sure I understood correctly. In review of the planning and zoning meeting, the PD was created at a time when there was not a category that exists now as C3. And in order to accommodate the uses, it would be similar to what is now C3. The way it was presented at P and Z was as a cleanup item, more or less, that even the developer or the owner of the property said that it wasn't necessary to even go forward if you know, because it would basically remain the same. So this was more of a cleanup item. Am I correct? Am I missing something on that?
I can't speak to the intent of the PD as I wasn't here at that time. But,
Yeah, but use in,
comparing the uses, they're very comparable. A C3 does allow for more uses, but as far as the intensity and the impact of the area, they would be comparable.
And letters were sent out. Objections?
Off the top of my head, I don't
There was
recall if we
a-
received any letters. There were a few that showed up to the planning
showed up.
The
commission.
planning, yes, there were, but
Most of that discussion was based on that access strip
Yes.
that is part of the property.
yes.
It's part of the property today. It has been used for access before. So at this point, they are requesting to keep that, depending upon the use that comes in, weigh their options if they need to continue using it or not.
Yeah, I would keep it open
And
too.
that's a 30-foot strip, I believe,
I believe that's correct.
something like that.
You know, it's funny, I never noticed that before, and I drive that street a lot. And it's very open, though. You can see it as you go by.
Okay, do we have individuals who want to speak to this? We go in 7 o'clock to public hearing.
Ms. McInturf, are there any speakers?
We do have one raised hand. Bruce Strachey, please state your name, address, and you now have 4 minutes to speak.
Bruce Strachey, 615 Earl Garrett, and I represent the applicant. And I'm glad to answer any questions that the council may have. And Kim mentioned one question already about the cleanup, which I'm glad to address. And that's, Kim, you're exactly correct. The owners of this property, the principals, very much are in support of the Kerrville 2050 plan and the new long-range plan for land use in Kerrville. And they simply saw an opportunity to get rid of a PDD and allow for the existing legal non-conforming use that's on the property with doing that. And so that's the entire purpose of this, is to simplify our zoning code for the city and make it fit with the 2050 plan. And the applicant is happy to keep the PD as it is, but we just saw an opportunity to be supportive of the city and staff and all the work that's been done in the last 24 months. And that's what we're really, truly trying to accomplish with this application today.
Council, do you have any questions of Mr. Strachey? Okay, seems pretty straightforward. Do I hear a motion? Oh, we're out of the public hearing at 7:01.
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2020-10 as presented.
I'll second that.
All right, got a motion second. All in favor, let it be known by the raised hand. Okay, and it passes unanimously. McElhennan, will you read in the next item?
Ordinance number 2020-11, an ordinance amending Chapter 60 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Kerrville, Texas, which adopted zoning regulations, use districts, and a zoning map in accordance with the city's comprehensive plan, such chapter more commonly known as the City Zoning Code, by changing the zoning and classification of a property located on the northwest corner of and adjacent to the intersection of Harper Road, State Highway FM 783, and Lois Street, more commonly known as 1104 Lois Street, comprising approximately 3.97 acres from a single-family residential zoning district, R1, to a residential transition zoning district, RT, and providing a cumulative clause, providing for severability, providing an effective date, ordering publication, and providing other matters relating to the subject. Any citizen wishing to speak on public hearing item 2D, please raise your hand now via the Zoom app or *9 if calling in by telephone. After Mayor Blackburn opens the public hearing, the moderator, Ms. McInturf, will notify you when it's your turn to speak and then unmute you. Mayor Blackburn, back to you.
Okay. Mr. Paxton, once again, we've seen you before tonight, haven't we?
I believe so. This is a request to go from R1 to RT on an unplatted lot, roughly 4 acres. There is an existing home on this lot at the intersection of Harper and Lois Street. The comprehensive plan has this area designated as neighborhood residential. Within that designation, the comprehensive plan does recommend limited amounts of local retail and services that may be appropriate in certain locations as needed to support the primary land use. In this case, they are proposing to have an office building in that home. So that would be appropriate in this area, especially on the edge of that neighborhood up against 2 collectors. Kerrville 2050 plan also encourages the reinvestment of existing properties, and the request is consistent with comprehensive plan and zoning policies. Planning and Zoning Commission approved it with unanimous vote on March 5th. I'd be pleased to answer any
I
questions.
think that was the location of the historic Starkey home, wasn't it? No, okay. Okay. So RT would be residential and non-residential.
It is residential transition. It does include some non-residential uses. Some of the different criteria that are required is that it must remain residential in character so that it does fit the scale of the neighborhood around it. More of our residential transition area that we're used to is on the north side of downtown, where you see that go from downtown into the neighborhood and then transitioning to full neighborhood and single-family homes. So it doesn't stand out like a commercial use, but does allow for the mixture of uses.
Okay.
I have a question.
Council, do you have questions, comments?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
The P5, P12, P8, P8, can you explain the numbers below the letters?
The footnotes are different requirements based on those particular uses, whether it be another chapter of the Code of Ordinances
Okay.
or the supplementary requirements within the zoning code.
Okay, and at the P and Z meeting, the owner mentioned he might be planning some other small dwellings in the perimeter of the property.
Right. This is a 4-acre site.
It is
or
4,
Almost
okay.
4 acres, 3.97 acres. So they would have room to subdivide and possibly look at some other properties.
And that would be allowed.
That would be allowed.
Okay.
Drew, would there be room to do that? I mean, that house sits in the
In
middle
the
of
middle
that.
of it.
And
That's,
I would hate to see, depending upon where he put them, I would hate to see a small strip mall, so to speak. That's kind of what came to mind that when he mentioned that. That wouldn't be allowed out on Harper and on Lois, would it?
No, it wouldn't look like a little strip center. Anything that they did do would have to still maintain that residential character. So if they were to subdivide it, they would have to either be dwellings or office buildings that look like single-family homes.
So like, for example, Earl Garrett, where it goes up to Murda Street in that area, that's RT. So the businesses there have the look of homes. And as you transition up the street, then there's actually residential dwellings, but the character is all residential. The use is just a little more,
Has the owner of the property given you indication what his intent is?
They have said they are looking at future plans, but they don't have anything set in stone.
Would you go back to the uses again, please?
The office,
because it has halfway houses permitted, and that's kind of
Yeah.
interesting.
So I'm just glancing down that, so the modular homes are permitted? So
That's
they could
correct.
come in there and put,
and the modular homes, the halfway house, several of these uses are allowed in R1 as well. So those are allowed today.
Pet supply sales.
And the modular home
so
is,
really the transitional just gives them the opportunity to put some light business in, light commercial in.
that's correct.
Wait, what'd you say about modular homes?
Modular homes are different than manufactured homes.
Sure.
So the modular home does meet the building code, whereas a manufactured home is under the HUD standards.
There are some really nice looking modular homes these days. And the whole process is advanced.
Drew, the square footage of the house, I didn't look it up.
I do not know that. I can look
So
that up if
would
you
they,
need.
if they would have more than, they'd open it up for several offices, that type of thing is what he would be
Right now, they're
considering?
looking at a real estate office. Local
single
real estate
user.
office moving into that.
It's a beautiful home, inside and out.
Well, it's a beautiful site. That's why it's almost too bad to have it messed up with other buildings especially on the outside of Harper and Lois, but,
But if they did come back in and do that development, they've still got to come back in and do site plans and city
Oh, yes,
approval. It's got to
yes.
meet setbacks and
Yes.
minimum lot sizes and.
yes.
Plating requirements, minimum lot sizes, the development standards within the RT, depending upon the use. That's correct.
and for sightliness, one thing I was watching when I watched P and Z is any additional parking they put in is going to have to be behind.
That's
So
correct.
they can't affect the frontage of the lot with,
With parking.
so to speak.
And my guess is they're gonna have some difficulty getting road cuts off Harper Road too. I mean, if they try to come in that way, so.
Right. They do have at least one existing curb cut. They may have two
There's one
Right
on
before the
either
next house.
Lois and Harper.
Right.
If those would stay as they are, or those could be reconfigured?
They'd have to go
Those
to
would
the state.
could stay as they are. If they're reconfigured, parking would at least need to go to the back.
Go to the back.
Harper Road is TxDOT controlled, so they would have to work with TxDOT to gain that curb cut.
Okay, at 7:09, do we have citizens to speak to this?
Ms. McInturf, are there any speakers?
We do have one raised hand. Bruce, I will unmute you. Please state your name, address, and you now have 4 minutes to speak.
Bruce Strachey, 615 Earl Garrett. I'm beginning to feel like a parrot. Folks, the property across the lowest from this is C3, where Moore's Furnishing is, and it's R2 across the street of Harper. Across Harper is R2, across Lois is C3, and RT is one of our best zones in town for developing properties in a way that has a residential character but allows commercial businesses, like the Earl Garrett example that was given today. And so I'm sorry to take up your time, but I would just encourage you to look at this in a way that perhaps brings the commercial use to this property, but isn't C2 or something more intense, because this is a beautiful old house that it would be wonderful to keep in Kerrville.
Okay. Do you have any other speakers? That's the only speaker?
We do not have any more raised hands or speakers on this item.
7:11, we go out of the public hearing. Council, further comments, questions?
I'll make a
Okay.
motion to approve ordinance 2020-12.
All right, motion's made.
11.
Second, by Ms. Clarkson.
Oh, wait, just want to
It's
make sure.
2011.
2011.
Was it 2011? Excuse me, I'm ahead of myself. 20 dash, thank you.
Yep.
2020-11.
Yeah.
My
All right.
apologies.
Okay, all in favor, let it be known by the raised hands. Okay, there you go, it's unanimous.
Trying to move us along.
Okay. All right, if you read the 2E in for us.
Ordinance number 2020-12, an ordinance repealing ordinance number 2006-04, which created a planned development district on an approximate 7.47 acre tract of land out of the Samuel Wallace Survey number 112, abstract number 360, within the city of Kerrville, Texas, said tract located between Meeker Road and Beach Street, establishing the zoning on this same property as medium-density residential district R2 in accordance with Chapter 60 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Kerrville, Texas, which adopted zoning regulations, use districts, and a zoning map pursuant to the city's comprehensive plan. Such chapter, more commonly known as the City Zoning Code, providing a cumulative clause, providing for severability, providing an effective date, ordering publication, and providing other matters relating to the subject. Any citizen wishing to speak on public hearing item 2E, please raise your hand now via the Zoom app or *9 if calling in by telephone. After Mayor Blackburn opens the public hearing, the moderator, Ms. McInturf, will notify you when it's your turn to speak and then unmute you. Mayor Blackburn, back to you.
All right, Mr. Paxton.
This is another case of a planned development district that was not built. This was from 2006 for a multifamily project. They are looking to do R2 medium density, which matches the adjacent area. This property is proposed as single-family homes. They have started their process of going through preliminary plat, working on utility design. Comprehensive plan has this area designated as transitional residential, which not to be confused with the zoning district RT. The transitional residential includes everything from single family up to multifamily. So it is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Additionally, looking at more housing of different styles and sizes is supportive of the housing plan and the housing guiding principles within the comp plan.
Would these homes, you know enough about this, would these homes be considered affordable?
Yes, they are looking at, I believe the range was from about 1,200 square feet up to 1,600 square feet for these homes. I don't know the exact price point, but they were working towards that workforce housing, affordable housing,
Yeah,
or affordable homes rather.
okay, all right.
Is the plat that we have, or the sketch that we have, is that pretty close to what they're going to be doing?
Yes.
You think?
Yes, so that they've already started their civil infrastructure design or civil engineering design. They are working with engineering and public works on that currently. They are going to build out 2 existing streets. The mouse gone here. This street here and this street here were platted a number of years ago but never built. So they've purchased the vacant lots that remain on that area. They are working to build those streets, water and sewer lines. That's gonna be their phase 1. That's already zoned to R2 today. And
They've
then you
cleared
can see
land
the
there, too, I
slightly
think,
darker
yeah.
line.
Mhm.
These lots are what they're requesting today to go to R2. This lot is larger so that they can accommodate some of the drainage concerns for this area. It is significant topography as well. So they're trying to get that mitigated as best as possible so they're not impacting the adjacent property owners.
That's a dense, steep lot.
It is.
Very challenging.
I think they've tried to keep that contained into one lot as much as possible and still be able to build out the rest of the property.
So just as reference, along the north line and then the east, those are platted subdivisions where homes already exist and they're R2. I mean, is that correct?
That's correct.
Because you would really, if you look at the lot sizes on what's proposed compared to the lot sizes that surround it, to me, it looks very much in keeping with what's already there.
That's correct.
They didn't have to obtain any right-of-way to extend the road. It was already platted. It was already dedicated to the city for that purpose. And so at this point, is that correct?
That's correct.
So it was dedicated to the city. This didn't belong to someone else. It was on a plat of a subdivision within the city. Just because a road's not there doesn't mean that it belongs to someone else, like a private property owner. If it's on a plat, then it exists.
That's correct.
So, Drew, part of that open space, is that going to be, and they may not know yet, but I thought there was talk of a park or just an open grassy area for residents? Do you
I
know?
don't think that's going to be the case.
Okay.
I believe the goal was to still make this a buildable lot,
Oh, okay.
but to use the balance of that lot for any drainage
Drainage,
facilities necessary.
okay.
And this is
And-
probably not a fair question off the cuff, but how big does a subdivision have to be before the city requires green space and park?
We don't.
There's
As
no-
part
no
of the
requirement.
platting and building requirements, we do have a parkland dedication fee. So they can either opt to donate land to the park system through approval of the Parks and Council,
Or pay money?
or pay the fee.
Okay.
So with that plat, they'll be paying that parkland fee.
I was actually on the Parks Board when we put that into effect about 100 years ago.
And it still holds.
Wow, you've been around a long time,
Drew,
Gary.
will there be an HOA with this subdivision?
I do not know.
Okay. Do we have any speakers?
Ms. McInturf, are there any speakers?
We do not have, oh, we do have one raised hand. It is Travis Page. I will unmute you. Please state your name, address, and you now have 4 minutes to speak.
This is Travis Page, 1316 Lytle Street. I just wanted to make myself available to answer any questions you guys might have had. I know I've spoke to a number of y'all and have enjoyed the process so far, at least trying to find the most appropriate property to give us some workforce housing because we know how difficult that can be. So at this time, I just wanted to say thank you for all your efforts doing the Zoom call and everything else, and offer myself to any questions you might have.
Okay, council.
Travis, I would ask you the question that I asked, and it really doesn't have anything to do with the zoning. Are you planning an HOA for this area?
No, ma'am, we were not planning an HOA because we were not going to do a park or any gates or anything like that because we were just going to use the existing streets.
Okay.
I just heard in the P and Z meeting some concerns from the existing neighborhood, and I'm sure because this hasn't been disturbed in quite some time, a new street, a new house in front where there wasn't a house before, there were some speakers at the P and Z meeting. So I'm sure you'll be working with the neighborhood to, monitor and manage construction inconveniences and things like that at the very least.
Yes, ma'am. I've already talked to neighbors surrounding the entire property. And we are working with Kyle and the city engineer staff on drainage that we can resolve through the comments.
Great, thank you.
Of course.
And Travis, how many units do you think you'll have?
The goal is between 30 and 35.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Travis, I just want to thank you for doing this project because we so need this kind of housing.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. I'm one that struggled with finding a home when we moved here. So it it hits home. I take it pretty personal.
Sure, sure. Okay, council, any other questions of Travis? All right, okay. We're out of the public hearing at 7:21. Further questions, comments of the council?
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2020-12 as presented.
Okay,
Second.
got a second? Okay. All right, all in favor, if you'd let me know by the raised hand. Okay. By the way, as I am handling these papers, I'm trying to avoid something that somebody mentioned when we did their press conference in here on the COVID-19. I couldn't get to the next page, so I licked my finger, which you're not supposed to do. So, anyway. All right. Now, City Manager Mark McDaniel and Fire Chief Danny Smith, if you will tell us about an update on COVID-19.
Yes, sir. So just a few updates from me, and then I'll turn over to the chief. First of all, we've been trying to track how many loans have been provided in Kerr County under the Paycheck Protection Program from the federal government. There were two programs. One was federal, the other one was state. So far, KEDC reports that there have been an estimated 600 loans, for forgivable loans, just in Kerr County. Of course, the banks that are in Kerr County service customers that are outside Kerr County, so we're trying to capture just to Kerr County. So Gil Salinas is wrapping up that report, and he'll have that information on Thursday for the report out to the community that we've been doing weekly. And he'll hopefully also have a number in terms of the volume as far as we know it's several $1 million, but we just don't know what the number is just yet, but we're close. Also, we were in conversation today with a company that's called Lift Fund. Might sound familiar to some of you. They were contracted with the state to administer about 2/3 of the $50 million that the state has now put out there for the Paycheck Protection Program. So it's a separate program from the federal government. They reported today that the average loan that they provided is about $36,000, and they have money left. So they're encouraging folks to contact them through liftfund.com to make application if you've not already made an application for the Paycheck Protection Program. This would be for small business, less than 500 employees. So there's still money left, and people should try to take advantage of that if they haven't already. The City and County CARES Act funding, there was an announcement yesterday on a call with mayors, county judges, and the governor. The governor announced that the allotment would be $55 per capita. So that puts us right at about $1.3 million, maybe a little bit more than that for Kerrville. The county is almost an equivalent amount because there's about 25,000 people out in the county. So the way they do it is if the county is less than 500,000, they allot the monies to the cities that are incorporated. So in our case, it would be Kerrville and Ingram. And then all unincorporated areas, the county would get $55 per capita for them, but not the same money that is already given to the cities. Over 500,000, it's done differently. The county gets all of it, and then the county administers it back to the cities. Or if a city's over 500,000, they also get a separate allotment. So they've announced that yesterday. So we're eligible for up to 1.3 million, but we've got to apply for it, and it's on a reimbursement basis, except for the initial allotment, which is 20% of that number, comes to us just by it basically attesting that we meet all the criteria, and it still has to qualify under the COVID-19 Treasury Department guidance. And the vast majority of it must be spent on health, medical, and public safety types of expenses, again, on a reimbursement basis. So there will be an audit at the end of this. We'll have to make sure that all of our expenses would adhere to the guidance. But I will tell you that, and this would be through December, there's a lot of information out there through multiple departments, whether it's the Economic Development Administration of the Treasury Department or Commerce Department or HUD or Health and Human Services, multiple places where funding is available. And so we're just trying to navigate our way through all that right now, and probably will look at some assistance in doing that as other entities have done, just because it's just so much, and it's very short fuses and all brand new requirements. So we're working through that now, and it's encouraging that finally some information is coming out. None of this would be for revenue lost. So to make up for our sales tax lost or a hotel tax lost, none of that would be available. It's basically for expenses, and not just city expenses, but other entity expenses in our community. So we're trying to figure that out as well, as far as who might need that funding. I've been in conversation with KISD, Shawnee University, Peterson Health, and others about their needs and trying to, again, navigate through all that. So more to come as we go through that information. And then finally, because council members have expressed an interest, we're also working on our own COVID Small Business Relief Fund. Our plan is to submit something to you all at your next meeting on May 26th, as far as an idea and a plan for doing that. We're still working on identifying the source of funding, criteria for funding, and how that program would be administered, which was part of the reason why we talked to Lift Fund today. And they were very helpful on lessons learned on all the different funding that they've administered for the state, as well as for counties and cities across Texas. And then the last thing is, in the governor's last order, he said that we could open our pools provided the local government authorized it. So this is kind of similar to what y'all did at your last meeting for the library. That's something that I need for you all to give a go-ahead for. So we plan on doing that on around June 16th. Hopefully June 16th, could be before or a little after. We're trying to train lifeguards now and prepare for that opening. But if I could just get a vote from the council to allow us to open the pools in June, that would be great. So that's my report for today, and then we'll turn over to the chief.
When do you want that vote?
Tonight would be great.
Okay, all right.
Do we need a
Question.
motion, or do you just want to consent?
Motion and second.
A motion. Well, I will move that
What-
we.
Can I ask a question
Sure.
first?
I'm sorry.
As I recall, when we looked at the funding, the budget cuts to try to reach our 2.24, 2.25 million, $60,000 of that was pool.
Was what?
I think there was a $60,000 line item in there because we weren't opening the pool.
Yes.
So
Right,
where are we
so-
gonna make up that 60,000?
Well, we're gonna have a little bit of revenue to cover that. But that'll be something that we'll be bringing back to you. Once we get our sales tax number for this next month, we're gonna recalibrate that whole model. So we'll have a new number for you.
Okay.
But,
All right, we got a motion.
Yeah, I will move that we open the
Open the
pool
pool. Do I hear a second?
June 16th,
on or around.
on or around June 16th.
I'll
I hear a
second.
second, okay. All right, all in favor of the pool motion? If you'll let me be known by a raised hand, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Chief?
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. So I'll start the COVID-19 update tonight with just a snapshot of what's happening in the state of Texas in terms of testing and that's being conducted. As of May 10th, there's been a little over 500,000 tests conducted in the state of Texas. Wasn't able to get the number for the exact total in Region 8 that encompasses a 24 county region that City of Kerrville and Kerr County is included in. But they were able to give me the numbers on what has happened since the Texas Military Department has started its COVID-19 testing in rural counties like Kerr County, and which began on May 1st. So there's been a total of 2,868 tests conducted just in Region 8 by the Texas Military Department. Total case count for Region 8 is 2,555 COVID-19 cases in Region 8, 81 deaths. This is a look at Kerrville. As of May 10th, there's been 1,108 tests conducted in Kerrville, Kerr County. We were notified, the city was at approximately 4:45 this afternoon, that we now have our 10th confirmed case in Kerr County. It is a result of it's travel related, and that person traveled outside of Kerr County, and the individual does reside in Kerr County, not within the city of Kerrville. So as of today, we have a total of 10 confirmed COVID-19 cases. 5 have recovered, 5 active, and happy to report we still have no deaths in Kerr County. For the reporting period of May 3rd through May 9th, last week, the numbers coming from CPL and Peterson, the outreach screening clinic, total tests within Kerr County, 153 tests conducted, 2 confirmed cases, and once again, 0 deaths. And as of Monday, May 4th, Peterson has relocated the outreach clinic to Peterson Urgent Care located on Junction Highway. These are some numbers from the Texas Military Department's testing. We've had 2 dates conducted in Kerr County, primarily in the city of Kerrville. The May 2nd test date, there was 107 tests conducted, 2 confirmed cases, and there's still 7 tests pending from May 2nd. Once again, they conducted a second round of tests on May 8th. They completed the test results for May 8th before the May 2nd test results. There was 116 tests conducted, no confirmed cases on that date, and there's 0 tests pending from the May Texas Military Department tests.
Do you have any idea why there's still 7?
You know, I don't. I asked that question of DSHS, how were you all able to complete the May 8th test results before May 2nd? They couldn't give me an answer. They didn't have an answer for me. But, you know, they've been pretty good about trying to turn the results around in 48 hours, but they did ask me to just be patient with them because they're doing so many tests. There's going to be a backlog in us getting the results.
Just for the patients waiting for those results.
And I've got 7 pending. That's probably 6 now. Our 10th case is, I'm pretty sure it's going to come from that 7 pending number. Once again, still talking about the Texas Military Department mobile testing. Once again, we're waiting the May 2nd testing completion confirmation, 6 pending. We have the May test results in, no positives in that batch. Texas Military Department is going to be conducting a 3rd round of tests at the Youth Event Center, May 14th, and that'll happen from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Thursday. When May 1st, our county was able to open a number of establishments within the city at a 50% occupancy rate in Kerr County. And in the governor's document for opening Texas, he spelled out 4 things that could happen that would require our county, or counties like ours that were allowed to open at 50%, to revert back to a 25% occupancy rate. And those 4 things are 5 consecutive testing or tracking intervals with positivity rates greater than 12% in that interval, We've been tracking the cases in Kerrville and Kerr County on a weekly basis since the first week of March. That's consistent with what the state of Texas is doing, so a tracking interval for us will be a weekly interval. And I'm going to talk to you a little in a minute here, a little about what that looks like for us to have to go back to that 12% to a 25% occupancy rate. Another item that would cause us to revert back to the 25% occupancy rate would be 3 positive cases per 1,000 residents, which in Kerr County, 2018 census says there was 52,400 residents in Kerr County, so that would be 156 cases for us. Third item that could trigger that would be less than 15% of the surge capacity of hospitals for the catchment area being available. Peterson is our hospital, and in discussions that we've had with them, that's not a concern that they're going to drop below that 15% surge capacity. And then finally, the fourth item that could trigger it is under GA18, at any point, the governor by proclamation could return a county to essential services only. To give you an example of what the 12% would look like for the reporting period of May the 5th through May 9th that week, between the Texas Military Department, Peterson, and CPL, there was a total of 270 tests conducted. 12% of that 270 would be 32 positive cases. And it's not just for 1 week, it must happen. We must hit that 12% mark over the course of 5 consecutive weeks. So if we get a break anywhere in there, then the cycle starts over. But it has to be at that 12% mark for 5 consecutive weeks. Since we've been tracking it, the first week of March, Kerr County has averaged somewhere in the neighborhood of a 1 to 2% positivity rate. And then in that reporting period, May 3rd to May 9th, we had 4 cases confirmed during COVID-19 cases during that reporting period. This is just the numbers coming out of the Joint EOC call center for the week of May 4th through May 8th. We fielded the call center fielded a total of 47 COVID-19 related calls. They averaged about 9 calls a day related to COVID-19. And the 3 most frequently asked questions were, when do the bars open? The number of COVID-19 cases in Kerr County, and the number to call to actually schedule for a COVID-19 test with the Texas Military Department. A few notables that has happened since we last updated you as a council. We facilitated the delivery of PPE to our local doctors' offices. This is PPE that has come to Kerr County from the Strategic National Stockpile sent to Kerr County, and we were asked to facilitate the delivery of it to the doctors and dentists in Kerr County. Patients and staff, visiting doctors' offices are now required to wear masks, both the staff and the patients. The Governor Abbott's May 11th and 9th announcement now requires that 100% of the staff and residents in our nursing homes be COVID-19 testing. So where we were probably going to be in line for a 4th and 5th and 6th round of COVID-19 testing by the Texas Military Department, we're hearing today that those resources are now going to be shifted to test the staff and residents of our nursing homes. In fact,
Is there any option for the elderly residents to opt out if they're asymptomatic?
to opt out of testing if they're a resident at the nursing home? I'm not aware of one. I can look into that. It's a governor's order, so I'm not certain if it's.
My grandmother is 93 and has late stages of dementia, so I'm asking for that.
Yeah, and I think the goal is, which we all know, is that's been a hot spot for COVID-19
Absolutely.
cases. So we're just trying to
Absolutely.
make sure that
No, I
We should be
appreciate
cover the
sooner.
bases, that we don't have an outbreak in one of our
I get
nursing
it.
homes
I
here
understand.
in Kerrville, anywhere in the state of Texas.
And that would be, right now, it's just a one-time testing. It wouldn't
Yes.
be
Yes.
ongoing.
From, they didn't distinguish that it would be ongoing once a month or once every 6 months. Right now, what they're saying is the goal is to test all the staff and residents in our nursing homes. And there's a lot of questions being asked. What does it look like? How is it going to be done? And the city was just informed today that the resources with the Texas Military Department are going to be shifted to handle that testing. With that, I'll take any questions you might have for me on it.
I have one. This is a question I personally ask every time I hear of a new case, is can I assume I would be contacted if I had been, within the last 24 hours, in the path of this latest positive test?
Okay, so what you're asking about is contact tracing, and the way that's
Right.
done is, to give you an example, the positive case that we were notified of today in Kerr County. It's travel related outside of Kerr County, but for your instance, if someone tested positive in Kerrville, then once that positive test was received, they would, through contact tracing, trace down everybody that has come in close contact with that individual. And if you've been in close contact with them,
Within
you will be
24
notified.
hours or within a week or?
I don't know what the time frame is.
Okay.
But I doubt if it would happen within 24 hours because it's a pretty cumbersome task to run down all the individuals that,
Right.
that person has had close contact with. But if you've been in close contact with someone who tested positive through contact tracing, you should be notified.
Okay, and since I haven't been, I guess I haven't been in that path, but I just checking. Thank you.
We don't want to get you in that list.
No.
Anyone who was tested positive, their family would just automatically, people that they'd been around would automatically also be quarantined?
That's the goal, is if you've been in close contact, to isolate for 14 days until they can determine if you're presenting with any signs or symptoms.
Chief, two questions on the maintaining the 50% open level. One of those was if you have more than 3 persons
per 1,000.
Per 1,000. Okay, which would be 156 people. All right, then the other, this is very important. The call center questions are when are the bars going to open? How many COVID cases are there? And then number 3,
Where can I get tested?
Okay.
Yeah, the number.
oh, where can I get tested?
The phone number to get tested with the Texas Military Department.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a numeric order by number.
Yes.
Interesting.
So the bars were the top priority.
Of importance.
But the liquor stores are open, so.
Yeah.
It's cheaper, actually. Just
Okay, any other questions of the chief?
Thanks for all you're doing, Chief.
Yes,
Yeah.
thanks for
Yeah,
doing
If
a
there's
great
anything we can
job.
do for you, let us
Thank
know.
you. All right. Okay, there may be a council member who wants us to have an executive session tonight. If so, speak up.
It's not executive session, but it's something I was asked if I could.
I can't hear you, Ms. Clarkson. What?
Okay.
It's not executive session, but if no one else has one before we're adjourned, I was asked to give a quick update. It'll be very quick.
All right.
Well, I have a quick shout out. It was very quick. Thank you, the city of Kerrville, the library, the police department, all that gave food. Judy and I picked up last Friday boxes and boxes of donations from the city of Kerrville, the employees. We just want to say thank you very much publicly, on record. We took it over to Christian Assistant Ministries, and they were very grateful.
Good, good.
Well, and I think another shout out to our restaurants. We've had 3 who have given meals, and Humble Fork, Rails, and Cartwheels. And so we thank them for doing that. Humble
And,
Fork is still doing it.
Monroe's is still providing lunches at through the Doyle Center.
as far as I know,
I don't know about
but
that.
I'm not, I'm not
Okay,
sure.
I was in there today, and apparently
Well,
it's still
I
happening.
have had calls on the hotline requesting more of those dinners from Cartwell's.
More what? More what?
Requesting, can we get some more of those $1 million spaghetti casseroles? So they're a
yeah,
hit.
yeah, all right. Okay,
At the special call meeting, I brought up the newly formed Kerrville Utility Kindness Fund. And just to let you know, in the last 2 months, Amy put together a confidential, no-named information with totals of past due accounts. And as a reminder, the Kerrville Utility Kindness Fund is set up through the Community Foundation to accept donations from individuals at 100%, meaning there is no fee for servicing this. This money is paid at the approval of a committee directly to the city of Kerrville to help give relief for citizens who have fallen behind in their utility payments. That there are 4 general metrics that they have to prove that their household income has been negatively impacted by COVID-19. They have the established prior history of paying utilities on utility bills on time each month without disruption prior to COVID-19, and that they are being proactive and working with the city to be positively, proactively addressing their delinquent bills already. So they didn't know this was coming, but the request to the committee was made for the paying some portion, not all, but a portion of the past due amounts for the last 2 months, leaving some of the responsibility on the owner of those utilities to continue to make their own payments. But those utility bills, $5,563.93 was allocated to the city and was directly applied to accounts that met those standards over the last 2 months.
Good job.
Really good. Right now, for total donations, including some pledges, we're sitting at about 10,000. So we're still looking for, of course, citizens to continue to support this cause through the Community Foundation. So I just wanted to let you know it's already starting to do what it was intended to do in short order, and that was exciting.
and thank you to the Community Foundation for this
Absolutely.
fund.
They're doing that
fund,
without any fees.
General help, they have done outstanding work.
An update on the food fund, we're at 46,000, so we're just
Wow.
4,000 short of our goal. And a lot of people might be interested. The San Antonio Food Bank will be back at Mustard Seed Ministries at Mount Wesley on the 26th. So if people know of people who need to be there, it'll be a drive-through again, and they'll start at 8 o'clock and go till 2 o'clock.
Okay,
So,
all right, good. All right, at 7:47, we are adjourned.